That's loud, dude.
Okay, we've got sound now.
We've got sound?
Yeah.
Okay. Are people commenting? They can
Cool.
hear
Good to hear.
All right.
I think we have sound.
Okay. I think if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you can comment and let us know if you can hear us now, that'd be awesome because we would like to.
Sound is on now.
All right. Oh, good. Okay.
Yep, we're getting the comments now.
Sweet.
All right, sound on.
All right.
So anyway, we were saying. All right, I'll try to recap what I said that everybody didn't hear.
Yep. Go ahead.
All right, so everybody good? We're good?
Good.
All right. So what we were saying was we didn't actually spend 10 years consistently working on End of Darkness. The project got kind of started, and then we had to pause on it, and then kind of come back to it a few different times over the years. One time when we started, it was for a stage production, and then we had to set it down because our cast was not quite big enough and crew wasn't big enough to handle the scope of this project. And then again, we kind of rebooted it, still with it in mind to do as a stage production, and we recorded an original score for it, a lot of which is still in the production today. But that was still with a stage play in mind. And then we picked it back up again in 2011 and readapted it for audio drama, just realizing that that would be a lot better fit for our team where we were as far as having so many people who wanted to participate. But the difficulty in doing a touring production of this scale, is just, it was too much to try and take on. So audio drama seemed like a good fit. And so we kind of learned some new skills and adapted and set our team up for audio drama. And that was in 2011 and 12 that we did a lot of the readjusting, adapting, and recording for the original cast there. And then we again had some issues with some technical problems and other things. Big one was that we used to have a facility that we worked out of, and that place closed down, and we actually were no longer able to have the same facility right in the middle of our biggest point of this production. And so that was a big setback. Yeah, it was wild to have that happen to us all at once. And so we literally had to shut down shop right in the middle of the most important parts of the production. So that put a big stopper on it, and then we kind of had to rethink and regroup. And then basically about a year ago, we came back to the production and said, it's time to finish this thing. And we just have been full blast getting it done since then. So it's been over a 10-year period that we've been working on the audio part of this, but not consistently, not straight through, I guess would be a better way to put it. So it's hard to say exactly how long it took because, it's some here, some there. But still. And that came about, Heidi had asked when the sound wasn't working there, how'd that come about happening? And basically we decided that we wanted to do a new version of the gospel story that would really focus in on some of the people and the characters so that our actors would be able to sink their teeth into some really good roles and depict those Bible characters in a way that was relatable and realistic. And so we tried to bring kind of a youthful edge to the story and a little bit more of an epic scope to the style of the production. A lot of times Bible productions kind of come off a little bit like a documentary. You're very reverent toward the material, and there's a lot to try and cover. And so they can be like that, which isn't necessarily wrong or bad or anything like that. But what we wanted to do is try and make it something a little bit more like a modern movie style production. And so we hope we've achieved that, especially with the music and sound design, which is what we want to be talking about tonight. So, and then acting, of course, we got Ethan and Rich here. So I'll introduce you guys real quickly. Ethan James is one of our lead actors. He plays Judas Iscariot, the betrayer. And just look at that face. Just look at the face, and and then Rich is Thomas, the doubter. And they've both done a great job. And then, of course, Rich also worked with us on he worked with me very closely on the sound design and audio and creating sound effects. He was the head audio engineer for the production and also one of the composers for the music. So you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick so they know who's who?
Hi there, I'm Rich Freeland.
Hi, Rich.
I
Yeah. So we'll let you take it, Heidi. Any other good questions now that we
All
got
right.
the audio working?
Yeah, absolutely. And just so our listening audience knows too, you all can ask questions as well, and we will address those as we see them come in. Ethan, let's actually start with you. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit? So you have what I would assume is kind of a hard role to play, to be the one who betrayed Jesus. How was that? What were your first thoughts when you got the role?
Why me? No, my first thoughts were, wow, I'm gonna have to dive into this and really kind of figure out, like, I don't know, there's not a lot in the Bible talking about Judas like as a person, you know, in the same sense that it talks about like Peter or John or even Matthew, you know, talking about them as like who they are and what they were, what their function was. It doesn't say what Judas did. It doesn't say what, you know, what his I guess his character was necessarily, except for he was like this guy that just would stab Jesus in the back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I think there was a lot of developing, I guess, what it would be to be that type of person that would turn against the God of heaven and earth, you know, who have seen everything and who have seen everything that Jesus would have done and been sent out with the rest of the disciples and still just been like, well, you know what, you know, I got other priorities, you know. So yeah, it took some work. It definitely wasn't easy. I spent a lot of takes. Daniel can attest to this. There was a lot of takes of me repeating lines, you know, to get the right tone, and then even on like some of the shots of the that go with the companion, like right expressions and stuff. So it took a lot of like getting my head in the right spot for that.
Gotcha. What did you walk away with? Like, what was something that impacted you?
The reality that there's not a lot that you know, everyone says, well, there's good in everyone, but honestly I think there's a little bit of bad in everyone, you know, that you know, how anyone could be capable of it. Basically anyone can be capable of the worst things, and kind of like a downing message, really. Kind of like, oh great, but obviously Christ, his story didn't end with the betrayal and didn't end with the death. He rose again, and in the same way, even the most evil and dark and corrupt can be redeemed. They can be saved.
That's good. Rich, what about you? I know your role as Thomas is kind of iconic for that one moment where he's doubting Jesus. But
Yeah.
like, what else were you able to, or like, what did you find in your character?
Well, you know, kind of like Ethan said, there's a lot of disciples in the Bible that really only get their name mentioned, or maybe just one or two facts that we know about them. So we had to write characters kind of based on those, you know, what's in the Bible. And what we know about Thomas is that he basically doubted the resurrection of Jesus to the point where he said, unless I, you know, touch the scars on his wrist and the wound on his side, I won't believe that he's risen.
Right.
And that we learn from that Thomas's faith is derived solely on what he's seen. And we heard that tonight actually it was through yesterday's portion where the lame man gets healed and the leper gets cleansed, and he's there and he witnesses that. And once he sees the leper get cleansed by Jesus, he's basically a man on fire from there on out. You know, he will stop at nothing to see his friend who's crippled be healed, you know, because there's not a doubt in his mind that if he does, he will be healed.
Right.
And we see that faith, that fire burn inside of him throughout the rest of the story up until the crucifixion of Jesus, where basically it crushes his faith completely in his spirit as well, to the point where you hear from the scene last night in the upper room after the crucifixion, he basically has an emotional breakdown. Everybody's in there talking about Jesus, asking questions, and he just can't handle it and can't take it anymore, and he just blows up at everybody. Jesus is dead. So he's a very, we kind of wrote him as a more fiery character, which was kind of fun to play. That's a very different personality than my personality type. So it was also a stretch in that sense.
Cool.
I'll comment really quickly on actually both of those guys' characters. I'm sneaking into writing stuff here a little bit. Heidi just cut me off. No, I'm kidding.
Absolutely.
But Rich said, we had to create characters for these guys from the one or two facts that are presented in the Bible. We actually were talking to some friends, and they were saying, asking about how we developed Peter's character from the few things that are said about him. He's kind of a jerk in the beginning of the production. And so where does that come from? And it's his declaration that he's a sinful man. He himself tells us that that's how he saw himself, when he met Jesus. With the other guys here, with Thomas and Judas, they don't have very much. I mean, it says Judas was a thief in the Bible. And there's a couple other little comments about him. And then same for Thomas, the doubting scene, but very little else. And so what I did was, as a writer, was we stuck them into the roles of being the friends of the lame man, some of the four friends, that took him through the roof. That's totally fictional, a little bit of creative license there, but it gave them a context for meeting Jesus. And I think these guys knock it out of the park with that scene, with both with Thomas being undoubting and then Judas being the skeptic in that scene. I think that really, it's a accurate representation of a lot of people's thoughts about faith and about God today. So you see those kind of played out in their characters. And it's kind of cool too, just because Thomas doesn't, basically Thomas isn't always a doubter. There's reasons for why people believe what they do. There's reasons why, we end up in the low places that we may end up. And for Thomas, that got to be played out in this story. We see him being a man full of faith and then falling away. And I think Rich did a great job. And then, of course, Ethan, again, you did an amazing job as Judas, really creepy. I mean, still, two or three people told me when I was like, we're testing the proofs. They're like, there's something wrong. The images for the CD insert and the visual companion, which if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. And they were like, there's something wrong with his face. In that scene,
really,
in the scene where he's deciding to betray Jesus. Yeah, there's something wrong with that guy's face.
Well, we've known that for years.
Asked me,
yeah.
What was that, Rich?
I said, well, we've known that for years.
Oh, right. No, Lily actually asked me, do you want it to be like that? I was like, yeah, it's supposed to be. He looks creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you really captured it, and you kind of see the opposite, of a man who doesn't get that bounce back toward faith. Yeah, he falls away altogether.
Judas just completely leans into it. Judas, in this production at least, it's funny you say the thing about Judas was a thief. In the Bible it says that he guarded he was in control of the money bag, and he was known to take money out of it. The 12 disciples, like personal funds, like treasury, he was in charge of it and was taking stuff out of it. It says that in the Bible. And it's funny that the first scene that you hear him in last night's broadcast, when Thomas runs up to Judas is in like a marketplace, or in you can hear like music and wares clinking together. You're like, so you don't really notice it until you're like, well, maybe there was something to that. Maybe, through and through, he had a chance to get out of it, but he didn't. He leaned further into it.
I'm glad you noticed that, Ethan. A little sound design trick there, which segues us really nicely into sound stuff. So, like, it's funny what one little sound will do to a scene and can do to a character, right? So I put you in that marketplace for that scene, and it changed the nature of his introduction, like who he was. It could have been, it colors it, just a little bit different in different ways. I actually was talking to Rich recently about how Judas is kind of a covert Pharisee. In it, he tries to kick Mary Magdalene out of the party. He calls everybody else, and he actually has a little bit of a fascination with these Pharisees, even before he ends up meeting with them for the silver, later on. So just some more layers of character and fun stuff that you were able to do, and I think you really nailed it too, in those little subtle moments. We were talking, Rich and I were actually talking about you the other day about how you only had so many lines. Like we could probably count them on our two hands, how many things you say in
I have
the
a lot
play.
of background
Yeah,
like things that I
it's
say.
just but with one little bit of something, if it's delivered right, it can create a lot of character. So yeah, very good job. Very cool stuff, guys.
Real quick, jumping back into the writing side of things, it sounds like one of the most important things to you guys was to kind of humanize the disciples and make sure that they weren't just Bible characters or fictional characters in our minds. Was there anything else in particular that you like had in mind as you first approached this story to write it?
Well, I think that we're in a generation of people who are really desperate for truth. You know, they want to be able to know something for a fact. They want to be able to feel that what they believe is real and have reasons for it. And that's something that we all believe in. Our whole group feels that way, thinks that way, and so that was part of it. So sometimes the Bible gets presented kind of like a flannel graph presentation, you know, and it's hard to get the VeggieTales version of the story out of your head, you know, and bring it back down into reality. So that was part of the production's attempt as well, was to just kind of bring these people back to reality, and making them real, making them relatable, understandable, showing their flaws and weaknesses, showing their true heart to follow him, but they're, you know, the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. That line's not in there, but I was thinking about that the other day. Jesus doesn't actually say that to Peter in the play, but the whole play kind of says it. You know, it kind of shows it throughout the whole thing, you know, that all these guys have willing spirits, but their flesh is weak, you know, in one way or another. And so, yeah, it brings a lot of depth, and hopefully, you know, just kind of a relatable to the characters for people today.
Well, it brings it down out of the glass palace. You know, it brings the idea of these characters out of like the whitewashed halls. You know, we got, you know, historically these historical awesome people who did amazing things. You know, reading through the rest of the Bible, but like they were people too. Like they had just as many flaws and struggles as anyone else does.
Yeah, we
today.
want people to be able to meet God through this thing, you know, and understand who he really is, and, you know, and what his word's really about. And so the best way that we could think to show that was to have real people meet God in this thing, you know, and so it kind of happens, you know, Peter, Thomas, Judas, you know, Cleopas, they all have arcs and stories. Nicodemus' story is good, you know, the arc of his character that are people today, you know, things that real people go through on a regular basis. And so we hope that comes through, and that it, you know, can help guide people on their own walk with God.
Yeah.
And what was I just thinking? There was something you just said, Ethan, about that last bit there. What were you saying? I'm sorry, refresh my memory there.
Last bit.
Yeah,
I was just saying that, you know, the rest of the Bible talks about the amazing lives of these of these guys that walk with Jesus.
And you were showing that, basically saying, you know, that they were real people, and we did that with Jesus in a lot of ways in this production too. I was going to say that a lot of times in gospel presentations or movies, even, Jesus is depicted in kind of a distant, kind of reverent way, which is not bad. It's got its place for those type of things in there, but sometimes it can be almost alien feeling and removed from the scenes. And Jake Hancock, who plays it, is totally different than that. You know, he plays Jesus in a very, very realistic way. He has real relationships with the characters like Thomas and Judas and Peter. You know, they're real people, and he relates to them like a real person relates to him. And so we believe that about God too. He's a person, and he loves us in a real way. And so we're hoping that comes through as well, as Jacob depicts Jesus in this too, you know, in a very gritty, earthy kind of presentation of it, and emotional too. Jake does some very emotional acting throughout this, and we really can see. I remember the he just texted me that he doesn't have anything to say for his interview now. Great. Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about it, Jake. We got it covered. No, but Now you lost my train of thought, bro. But I won't say anything else. We'll let Jake go ahead and take his character away. But yes, it's all very good. I feel that he's done a great job in bringing that home in this as well. So
we're coming down to about the last 10 minutes here. So I wanna get into some of the sound stuff. Now, Rich, you were the head audio engineer, right? What does that entail?
I basically was the recording engineer for all the voiceovers, as well as the studio Foley that Dan and I did for the sound effects you hear, and also did a lot of the composing for the music. That wasn't really so much the audio engineer side of things, but basically the recording engineer for the project.
Gotcha. As far as the music goes, like, where did you, Rich and Daniel, like, where did you guys start? Even as far as like, how do you come out as a score to create it?
It started in a very small beat up house on the north side of Lansing. About it was a long time ago. A bunch of us had met when Daniel first had the idea to write this production, and our band we
called it the Band House.
Yeah, it was the Band House, and it was owned by the family of our then sound guy at the time, and that's where we were meeting for rehearsals. And we got together one night, and it's probably one of the most memorable days on this production that I have still, because we wrote the theme that you're hearing in this production that we kind of Daniel and I have kind of dubbed Jesus's theme, that you hear kind of echo throughout it. And it was the song that was titled End of Darkness, and we wrote it in one night, and it came together in a way that I have yet really to have any song come together. And I think we all drove home that night really kind of not, on the ground, if you will. It was kind of one of those moments that just kind of lifts you up and almost surreal. But that 4-chord progression that we have inspired me and Daniel to put the rest of the soundtrack to that theme, and it's kind of based off of that.
Gotcha. Daniel,
which led to us basically, bringing together an entire orchestra of people, a lot of the Bible actors, and then we worked very closely with the Homeschool Music Association here in Lansing, Michigan, and a lot of their musicians came over to work with us for the summer. So they got done with their regular school year and then joined us for the whole summer in a hot, sweaty gymnasium, practicing the score that you're listening to. All of the live scores. Some of the other pieces have been done, in studio and electronically, and with our other composer Denis Katenko, who's actually he lives in Russia, and he composed a lot of the soundscapes and the backgrounds and some of the big numbers that you hear for the healings he did. But the main themes that we created were done by an orchestra of people that rehearsed all through the summer and then got together, and Rich actually conducted them as well. And then so we recorded 2 different summers in a row. So a lot of the stuff that you hear, hopefully some of our musicians are tuning in. I already know a few of them are listening tonight for the first time to hear it all finalized and done. So kind of a long time coming for them too, because that was one of those earlier things that I mentioned that we worked on a long time before we actually moved toward the audio drama. So
yeah, they were in HSMA in high school at the time, and now they have kids. So it's been a while since we've started this thing, and we did that recorded performance with both summers. We did that for the stage, like Daniel said, and then fortunately we were able to use pretty much all of it for the audio production.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, it was about a 60-person orchestra, something in that range. So it's quite a big group, and you'll see that everybody, if you didn't know, your credits are there in the program and the CD insert and everything. So yeah, definitely awesome to work with all those musicians, and just composing the score with Rich was a lot of fun because, to be honest, I'm not a musician myself. I play by ear and kind of mess around a little bit, but Rich is the mastermind behind all of the arranging. He wrote the music, he wrote the score, actually composing it and putting it on paper and giving it out to the musicians. He arranged the group, as far as like who's seated where, and then practiced with everybody all summer long. I was kind of the big picture guy that was like, it should sound like this, and humming things, looking like a crazy guy in the back of the room. And Rich was really the one who pulled it all together. So it was pretty awesome.
They're really.
And sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rich.
I think one of the things that makes the score for this really colorful and textured, I guess is the word I like to use, is the combination of the score that I wrote and then the score that Dennis Kotenko wrote, based on our themes and some of the other themes that he wrote. His style of orchestration is very different from mine, and he's an amazing composer in his own right, and that really brought this whole thing together. We give it the unique sound that it does. Really helps. The music is almost a character in any production that you have it, whether it's this or Lord of the Rings or any other amazing movie that you can think of that has an awesome score. If you take that music, think about taking that music away and think about how that scene plays out without it. So.
Right. Yeah, it's very cool to see that too. There are actually some spots throughout this score where you will hear Rich's music and Dennis's music at the same time. They, pieces of both, or they worked on some together. So two very different styles of composing. And I kind of pulled those two, and then we actually have some bridges that kind of blend them all together, so it works really nicely together. And I think we got some great emotion too out of the score, and really enhanced some of those big scenes, the healing sequences, and also some of the stuff toward the end. We're actually going to hear more of Rich's score toward the end of the production in the next couple days here, so that'll be kind of fun too.
Cool. Well, all right. So as we're wrapping up here, I just want to read you something that a fan put out. It's not really a question, but they said, "I appreciate how you guys took time for not just miracles, but also all that Jesus taught. Says quite a bit about your priorities." So, kudos to you guys for where you put your priority.
Thank you.
As we're wrapping up, any last thoughts or things that you want to share?
I'd just like to say thank you to you and to everybody at SC Treehouse for hosting this event. It's really kind of helped give us some momentum to build on here at the beginning. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's our honor. We're honored.
We'll have to talk about sound design some other time, maybe, because we didn't get to say too much about that. Rich and I did do some really cool stuff in the studio, though. All of the sounds that you hear, we went out in the field and actually recorded it. So when you hear the guys running down the beach, that was me and Rich running down the beach. When you hear all the different things happening, we actually went out and did them. We threw coins inside of a big church stone building. When Judas throws the 30 pieces of silver, that's all real. We did it, and so it was either in our studio for the smaller sounds, and for bigger sounds and all like the footsteps and Foley, we were out there working with Michael Robertson, who was our Foley recordist. He was out in the field with us recording that stuff. It was very, very fun. It was an entire separate part of this project that we needed to do to create the sounds for it. So yeah, very cool stuff. Long and difficult process of bringing it all together, but worth it. I think we got a very realistic, kind of gritty sound out of it, and that's thanks to Rich and to Mike for helping me make that happen. And then Liliana too, my daughter, was out there with us doing the Foley. She did all the footsteps for the women, so they sound nice and light when they walk. It was actually an 8-year-old. So
cool.
Yeah, so that was another fun part of the project. Very, very intense process of pulling literally thousands of sound effects together for this production.
I won't give any spoilers, but everyone needs to stay tuned all the way through the fourth night, because that's where we kind of really showcase what we can do with sound. So you're going to be in for a treat there. Yeah.
Oh, and maybe, Ethan, did you have anything else you want to say before I have my little pitch here at the end?
Yeah, just enjoy the show, everyone. I sure am. I was just telling the guys right before we went on that I'm like, because of the arc of how Judas' story goes, I never actually I don't remember seeing or hearing the end of the show. So this last week or so here, once the whole product was assembled, I was like, oh yeah, I'll take a listen to it. I was like, oh my goodness, this is way more than I thought it was. So I was blown out of the water. I hope everyone else is too.
Yeah, so definitely stay tuned through the end of the live cast here. We're gonna give our real big final push there for the ending on Thursday night. So we've got 2 more really awesome nights of different scenes coming up here, but that last one is going to be very cool to hear on the live stream. So definitely check that out. But I was going to let you know too, some people are asking us, because our CDs are a little bit behind in the manufacturing process because of the virus thing and everything that's going on. Things are slowed down. And so CDs are on the way. We have a 3-disc set, limited edition 3-disc set. It's beautiful. It has a 24-page CD insert that comes with it. It's got all the photos from the visual companion in it. Very cool. And those are available through our website at BibleActors.com. You can check them out. But the people who have pre-ordered them, they're already waiting for them to get here. They're not going to make it here by Easter. But we have been getting emails and text message requests right now to see if there's any way people can get their hands on this to share with family or listen to before the holiday here. So what I'm going to say is, if anybody wants to go on during the live cast here, during the live stream over the next 3 days, today or the next 2 days, and order their CD now, we will send you an MP3 digital version of the production absolutely free right now, so that you can listen to it before Easter is up. So please go on the website, order your pre-order your disc, and we'll make sure to get you the CDs as soon as they're available, which won't be too long now. But we'll get you that MP3 copy that you can listen to immediately. So please go and check it out, BibleActors.com.
Fantastic. And with that, it is 8:30. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you tomorrow for the 3rd installment of End of Darkness. And just so you know, our next interview will actually be pre-recorded. So we won't be taking live questions at that point. But then Thursday, we'll be back with a live interview. All right. Have a good night.
And Jesus
Dear
is
God
coming.
bless.
Thank you.
And Jesus is coming.
Jesus is coming on Thursday night, as well as Cleopas and Simon. And I'll be back to talk with those guys. So hopefully see you there.